Chapter 39. If not for the off-white silken cocoon fabric of the walls, the office of the production control would seem almost normal. Of course, the desks and monitors were placed in a way that could accommodate the spider humanoids we'd exterminated, but otherwise it could easily have been the interior of one of the ugly towers in downtown Castleberg. All of the workstations had been abandoned, but the screens and monitors were still active, despite no cables tied to them. "It's probably some bullshit magic," I muttered. "Smash him with me." I was just about to take Brock up on the offer, when I saw what was depicted on one of the nearby screens. It was a man with a satyr-like transformation that had given him furry hooves, a tail, red-purple skin, and ram's horns. What's more, he wielded a bow instead of a gun and was in the middle of a heated one-on-one with another man wielding an honest-to-God AK-47. And somehow the bow wielder was winning. I wonder if he's glitched too. "Gambit, you oaf, come back here!" Panda yelled as Bee rounded the corner into the room with him on top of her head, his soft arms curled around her antenna as though they were steering sticks. "Oh, there you are," he said, his frustration immediately deflated. "Look at this guy," I told him, pointing to the screen. The satyr had won against the AK-47 guy, without being hit even once. Bee read the name that floated next to him. William Twine. I turned around and looked at a different screen. And it was a man and a woman, both clad in Roman goddess attire, looking like Mars and Justitia. Their skin color was an olive tan and they had golden glowing eyes. As we watched, the woman pointed her hand at an attacking player, conjuring a golden spear in the air that quickly impaled him, while the man deflected the bullets with some kind of holy bubble. "Look like some real goody two-shoes," Panda remarked. "Logan and Ophelia Maximilian," Bee read. "They're like supermodels." "Bet you they're framed as the good guys," I commented. I'd seen their type before and they were always hailed as paragons of morality. It was sickening to watch, so I looked away. On a nearby screen was someone I recognized. "Is that Tina?" Panda quickly spun around on Bee's head, then went, "Oh, you're right." Tina was someone who had been in the asylum with me for a bit, before being transferred to Madaville after escaping and assaulting a guy with battery acid. She was the kind of psycho that made everyone else seem normal by comparison, with a list of mental problems longer than the wish list Santa got every year. But the main issue with her was the split personalities, because sometimes she had been kind and polite, but, as was evident from what I saw on the screen, she was currently in the persona that everyone had labeled Nina. I was unsure if she'd come up with the name herself or if it was someone else, but the name had stuck. I watched as she used a bayonet on the end of a double-barrel to gore a guy, before releasing a blast of acidic spikes that melted through him and the nearby wall. Although there wasn't any sound emanating from the screens, it was clear that Nina was cackling like a maniac all the while. Her appearance was also very different from the black-haired woman I'd known, as she was now bald, gray-skinned, and covered in tattoos, with 3 additional gnarled limbs sprouting from her back. As 2 women charged for her with their own guns blaring, she casually reloaded her shotgun, while the 3 arms on her back began moving in a peculiar pattern, forming a ball of floating acid that was quickly sent towards them. It burst apart about 4 feet in front of them and absolutely drenched their bodies in voracious chemicals that ate through flesh and clothes, before the psycho leapt for them and began hacking them apart with the bayonet of her gun. "She seems fun," Bee remarked. I let out a sigh. "Just as lovely as ever, isn't she, Panda?" "She terrifies me," he just said. "Oi, I'm bored." "You literally just killed over 30 people. Panda scolded Brock. "It's worn off, the high." "Bored as, if I'm honest." I pulled my stare away from Nina. "Let's keep going." We moved through the office, only to end up in another, before following a tunnel that brought us down, where yet more offices lay. "See," Panda said, gesturing around us. "You just killed office workers. You're still complaining about that?" I asked him. "It was less than 20 minutes ago, you goddamn maniac." Pandemonium, B started, using his full name to indicate that she was upset. "Do not call him names. If you were going to be upset at me. Gambit just backed me up. I was the one who took the first shot." "That's not fair," he complained. "I can't be mad at you. You're just a kid." "I'm not a kid," she replied. I continued onward while they were busy bickering. All of the screens we passed by were just more players taking part in the event. There were several that stood out and, as a consequence, were being tracked and displayed on the screens, but while someone else might have taken the time to study the competition, I just found that I really didn't care. "Don't worry," Panda suddenly told me. "I've got a beat on all the dangerous-looking players. I know you don't care about that. Stop reading my mind. You're an open book. I know you've got psychic powers, you creepy teddy bear wannabe," I said with a scowl. Panda stood up to his full height atop B's head, putting his arms on his hips. "Say that again, birthday boy. I dare you." "Do you think they're all from Castleberg?" B asked, interrupting us. I broke eye contact with the plushie, then shook my head and said, "It has to be at least Madville and 1 or 2 other towns." When I used my dungeon break ability, it said there were over 16,000 people alive. "Only?" she asked. "I thought Castleberg alone had 80,000. A lot were probably kids, then the rest were either hiding in public facilities and got turned into monsters or were killed when the Great Game started. Accounting for all that, maybe Castleberg alone had 10,000, if we're being generous." "Many people did die since the power and all that went out," she answered thoughtfully. Panda still looked like he wanted to fight me, but I was over it already. We moved from office to office, until eventually we escaped the large cocoon structure housing them all and came to a small room that sprouted like a bulbous growth on the very bottom. As we walked out of the tunnel and into this room, we saw that there was only one thing here. It was neither a screen or a desk, nor even a spider creature. However, its presence did make the hairs on my skin stand up, as though it supercharged the air. I reached out and said, "Inspect." Error. Inspection failed. "This is not an inanimate object." "It's alive?" Panda muttered. I pulled out my looking glass and scanned it. Spoiler image. "It's a what?" "It is a plugin." Panda noticed. "I guess I have to kill it then," I said. Warning. Glitch Hunter Task Force deploying to your area. We know where you are. You cannot hide. Extermination imminent. Ah, what now? Chapter 40. A sound like tearing fabric came from outside the cocoon structure and seemed to emanate above the amphitheater. It was immediately followed by a loud bass deep thrum of wings. I had no idea what had just manifested itself into being, but it sounded absolutely massive in scale. "Crack open the snail and let's get the hell out of here," Panda urged. I didn't waste a moment and elbow slammed the iridescent shell of the psychic snail. Like sugar glass, the exoskeleton burst apart into powder and small fingernail-sized fragments, revealing a pale slimy body. The part that had been hidden by the swirling chambers of the shell still held that peculiar shape, while the rest visibly began to sag. The head of the snail slowly pulled itself off of the floor, with the eye stalks telescoping outwards and its large mouth flaps chewing on themselves. It was somehow kind of adorable, but I wanted the plug-in it held and I wanted to cut off the broadcast, so it had to die. I smashed Brock down onto its head. Bonk. Bonk? The squishy flesh flattened against the floor as both of the attacks landed, producing a sad slimy squelch, before slowly pulling itself back together. "It's not working," I said in horror. "Its body is too soft." "Stand back," B said, and I immediately obeyed. She aimed her palm at the pitiful head of the snail, then said, "Beetle blast." A tiny needle shot out through the hole in her hand, lancing into the creature's head and producing a strange slurp as the hole it formed was quickly squeezed shut. A moment of silence passed, then the snail's head began rapidly expanding, before blowing up like a skinned balloon filled with too much air. Some of the jelly-like meat spattered into my open mouth, tasting like grape pudding, while Panda, atop of B's head, had to dodge a golf ball-sized eye with the stalk still attached. "Not bad, 9 out of 10, Brock commented, as though he was a judge of the grotesque and macabre handing out a score. As the psychic snail died, a metaphysical tremor rolled out from its body, feeling similar to the tingling sensation of the brain zaps, which I used to get from going cold turkey on the medications forced into my body by the asylum orderlies. All my muscles started to quiver like instruments in an orchestra, while my fingers involuntarily splayed and curled in a strange rhythm. Then a single wordless sound was blown into the depths of my ear canals, sending a carpet of goosebumps rippling across my skin. B made a strange noise and even Panda was affected, though Brock was silent for once. "That was something," I mumbled. Hissing and bubbling emanated from the snail's dead body, as it quickly began to boil in the room-temperature air, its squishy flesh evaporating into invisible particulates that I highly doubted were good to inhale. I drew in a deep breath. B imitated me. "Tastes a bit like chicken on the tongue," she commented. I nodded. "Not the worst I've had." "Stop that," Panda scolded us. "Don't breathe it in. Brock doesn't have a nose." "That's proper sad, EY. I'll find an evolution that gives you a nose," I told him. "I love you." "Look," Panda said, pointing at the ground where the snail had been. There was a floating red wisp, similar to the one that I'd seen after killing a player some hours ago. Granted, the color was different. "I don't see anything," B muttered. I stooped and put my hand on the wisp. "Leftovers of enemy psychic snail, Uncolide plugin." Without hesitation, I picked it up. It was pretty heavy for its foot-long size, and was constructed of a shimmering type of silver metal. I quickly inspected it. Spoiler image. I had no idea what it meant by Uncolide, so I looked at the two skills to see if they explained it further. Spoiler image. Image. "I have more questions than answers," Panda said, reflecting my inner thoughts. "Can I see?" B asked. I spoke the strangely verbose command, but in response she just made a "huh" sound. "It's giving me an error that says restricted access." "Weird. I think you should slot it into your chest," Panda advised. "Even though you lose the crazy power of your punch-harder ability, since this prevents the recursion from taking place, you'll get insane knockback power that, to my ears, sounds like it might glitch your opponents into the environment." "It also affects Brock, for some reason," I said. "Fake yes cunt. Brock. There is a minor here." "Enough with that foul mouth of yours," Panda exclaimed. "Since when did you care?" I asked him. "I really don't mind," B replied. A tremor rolled across the web structure of the production control. Guys," Panda started. "Do you remember that strange sound from just before you killed the snail?" "What about it?" "Well, while we've been chatting, I think those glitch hunters have found our location. Let's go beat them up," I said. "I want to try out this new thing." I lifted the plug-in up, then carefully inserted the end into the cavity at the top of my chest. With a perfectly tight fit, the cylinder slowly slid down into my body, before releasing a puff of steam and popping out a small turning lever. I spun it clockwise with my right hand, and then a jolt of energy flowed through me. Plugin inserted. Booting up on Collide protocol. Installing. A sound like that of a dial-up modem tore through the air, before a loud click seemed to announce its completion. Plugin installed. On Collide protocol now in effect. Chapter 41. As we were moving back through the structure, leaving behind the room that had held the psychic snail, the floor and walls wobbled uncertainly, as though the fabric was under intense pressure from outside. B was staying behind me, Panda still on top of her head, while I led the way with Brock held at the ready. We were passing by the now dead screens and monitors of one of the many office rooms, when suddenly the wall ahead of us tore open, revealing a bulky figure. His body was like that of the beetle agents, but larger in every way and almost 8 feet tall, plus the species of beetle his carapace imitated was different as well. What's more, his right forearm was inflated to 3 times its normal girth, as though the weapon buried in his palm could release much more devastating projectiles than that of his smaller cousins. I swung my looking glass up, getting a quick glimpse before charging ahead. Spoiler image. "Don't fight him," Panda yelled, but I'd already leapt at him. With a diagonal swing, I sent the triple-headed hammer directly at the hunter's face, but it passed through his body, as he turned translucent and incorporeal. It seemed similar to the iframe's passive I'd unlocked. As he lifted his right arm towards me, the double trouble ghost strike followed the motions of my initial swing, but this one could hit incorporeal matter, as it, for some reason, classified metaphysical matter as a type of armor. Bonk? It was hard to gauge the expressions of a beetle like him, but I was fairly sure he was surprised, before the 4x knockback of my plugin triggered and sent him down into the floor with so much speed that he just passed through the web fabric. Actually, it wasn't because of the speed, but rather my glitch collision passive, I realized. "What just happened?" Panda asked. "He disappeared. I think I sent him through the building," I muttered. Then I heard a tearing of fabric next to me, and the same glitch hunter fell out of the rift in reality, landing on his armored feet, before swinging his arm up. "Recursive.action beetle_bolt," he said. In the same moment, I awkwardly dodge-rolled towards him, just as something like 1,000 spinning and buzzing beetle bolts tore through the spot that I rolled across, each projectile faster than the previous one. The last few came so quickly that they popped the air with tiny bursts of supersonic shockwaves. Thanks to my iframes, the dodge-roll made the projectiles tear through me as I became incorporeal. I was glad to learn that the collision with objects didn't affect the ground, but only attacks, as I'd otherwise have dropped through the floor. I leapt up from below and hit him in the crotch with Brock. This time his incorporeal defense didn't activate, and I sent him upwards into the ceiling with the first impact. Bonk. Once again, he flew through the fabric, but this time his feet were stuck on our side, while it seemed like his body continued moving. Although I couldn't see his body outside, I guessed, from the horrific stretching and tearing sound, that he was experiencing a very traumatic amputation of his legs. Another rift appeared above me, and the glitch hunter once again rematerialized, falling to the ground in a spatter of white paint like blood, with the bottom half of his body now 3 times longer than before and half as thin. A moment later his feet fell down from the ceiling. "Holy shit, Gambit!" Panda exclaimed at the result of what I'd done. "Beetle blast," B exclaimed, sending a needle-sized projectile at the hunter's head. The projectile not only failed to penetrate and plinked off his carapace, but it also curved weirdly through the air and reflected back into B's upper torso, where it sunk in and disappeared. I watched in horror as the carapace on her body expanded. "Beetle brawn!" She quickly yelled to counteract the effect, but then a loud pop blasted apart her upper torso, spraying white blood like that of a hunter, before she collapsed to the ground. B. I yelled in terror. Gambit, you've gotta use the back door to get her out of here. Panda yelled, his chubby and plushy body standing in front of where she'd fallen, his hands on her as though he could actually do something to save her from the grapefruit-sized hole in her body. I swung Brock down onto the head of the hunter who was prone on the ground, but a gust of condensed wind exploded outward from his body, sending me flying backwards into a monitor that broke under my weight. Even the ghost strike was repelled and dissipated. When I looked back at him, his body had returned to normal and he was getting back to his feet. Fuck! I shouted in frustration, then quickly hurried over and scooped B up into my arms, before running back the way we'd just come. Panda quickly crawled onto my shoulder. You've gotta use it, Gambit. I don't know how. I yelled. Just say the name of the ability and think about the boundary you'd like to cross. I don't know. Imagine that you're stepping through a door that leads to the room with the colored paths or something. Just hurry. A tremor rolled through the floor as the glitch hunter came in hot pursuit. Back_door.bat. I yelled, trying to follow Panda's instructions, while continuing to put distance between us and the unkillable hunter. Then I stumbled forward as the tip of my shoe hooked on part of the floor. I landed on my knees, the impact of stones sending a jarring jolt up through my body and making me drop B. As I looked to where she had tumbled, I saw that the surroundings were different. We were no longer in the production control. We were back near the colored doors where I'd used the conspiracy whistle and gotten a lot of people killed as a result. Also, the thing I'd tripped on wasn't the floor, but rather the dead body of the woman who'd shot me. I scrambled over to B's side, not really thinking about how we'd escaped the glitch hunter, but rather focusing on the fact that I needed to save her. Quickly navigating through my inventory, I pulled out the survival kit and the sewing kit inside. Though I had no idea how it'd work on her strange carapace-covered skin, I quickly began moving the needle through her body, circling the hole in her torso. It seemed clear that this beetle-brawn ability had saved her life, but not by much, as she had stopped breathing completely. When I finished with my shoddy needlework, the flesh quickly healed back to normal, before turning green and becoming covered in a tough carapace. I moved her around to get a look at her back, since the explosion had torn a hole all the way through, but it had also been healed. She's not breathing. Panda panicked. Relax. I yelled at him. I'm already panicking here. I need you to be the voice of reason. What do I do now? I don't know. Shake her or something. I shook her, but nothing happened. Use CPR numbskulls. Brock scolded us. Got it. I moved her onto her back, then began using both of my hands to push against her chest with a steady motion, making sure to apply enough pressure that it actually had an effect, which was easier said than done, due to the thickness of her carapace. For what felt like hours, I kept up this rhythm, until suddenly Panda exclaimed, "She's alive." I immediately lifted my hands away and she began coughing violently, some blood coming out with spit and bile. "Ugh," she groaned. Panda immediately hugged her arm. "Oh God, I'm so glad you're not dead." The plushie wailed. "What happened?" she asked, looking around. "Where are we?" "We're back in the game event," I said. There was a pause as she looked around, then she said, "Oh. What? I didn't get a weapon." I laughed. "You need your priorities checked." But I really wanted my own talking weapon. Like maybe a scythe or a flamethrower. Yai's got Brock. Be set up. I suppose I'll be ranged back up then. Wait. Panda said, annoyed. After all that, we are still going to kill more players. I thought you went there to stop the broadcast and end the event to save everyone. What? I asked, confused. No, that's not why I went there at all. I just wanted to kill the announcer. You're a real piece of work, he commented, I got back to my feet. "This time we're picking the red door," I said and walked over to where the guy who'd turned into a furry monster lay dead. I nudged his broken corpse aside with my shoe, then pulled the handle to open the door. "Are you coming?" Bee lifted Panda up onto her head, then joined me by the door. "Let's go kill some of those posers we saw," she replied confidently. "I wonder if there's any class that specializes in helping people like you," Panda mused. "Don't forget you need us to be insane to see you," I told him. "It'd be quite lonely for you if we were sane. Besides, it just seems boring. I'm slowly realizing the problem inherent with my existence," he replied. I changed the topic. "Last time, you said this would have been the bus door, but since there aren't any buses here, it'll be a surprise what we get." "I love surprises," Bee said. "Brock loves them too. I hope it's a blender trap so I won't have to deal with you two anymore," Panda joked darkly. Bee and I both walked through the doorway, before it quickly closed and became a wall against our backs. Chapter 42 "What the hell is this hallway?" I asked, walking along on the squishy floor, the bouncy motions of which were only exacerbated by my moon boots. "It's a rubber room," Bee said, surprised. "I was in a rubber room once," I said. "Was it full of rats?" "What? No." "Really?" "Yeah. Although I guess Mike was a bit of a rat. In the sense that he used to chew wires and cables." "So," Panda started, standing atop of Bee's head and looking at the squishy hallway we moved down. "What do you think we'll find? If it's not a boss, then what could it be?" Then, within just a few moments, the hallway ended in a door. "Huh," I remarked. I pulled open the door and a massive surge of wind from behind shoved us all through it. We tumbled along hard stones, before I hit a wall, only for Bee to fly into me a moment later. "Ow." Bee got up and looked around at where we'd ended up, only to make a strange noise. "What is it?" I asked, looking around at the world upside down. Immediately I saw the two people in front of us. They were dressed like Roman gods, and even looked the part with their sculpted olive-tanned bodies, golden glowing eyes, and haughty demeanors. "Ah, crap, I think it still sent you to a boss," Panda commented. "Except the boss is whoever is in the lead of this event." The woman, Ophelia, lifted her arm, but the man, Logan, stopped her. "You're Gambit," he said. "Hi there," I replied, still upside down. "I've heard much about you." "Really?" "I haven't heard anything about you." "Indeed?" "My sister and I are both well known as the saviors of Madaville." "Saviors?" I asked. "Is that why you've been killing people?" Both of them had weapons hanging from simple holsters on their heroic-looking attire. The guns were highly evolved, as they looked a far cry from the flintlocks that everyone except me had started with. As I'd seen in the brief view of them through the monitor earlier, they both clearly favored using their class skills. I quickly pulled my looking glass out, the woman tensing up, but the man once again halting her. "We have only killed those who sought to hurt us." Spoiler image. "Are you planning on hurting us?" he asked Bee and I. "Not particularly," I said, after noting that he also had an evolved class. Heroic Savior did sound like a total goody two-shoes class though, but, if game logic was anything to go by, that meant he'd be very difficult to kill. He basically radiated main character energy. "I don't know," Bee said. The woman, Ophelia, turned her menacing gaze on her. "It could be kind of fun to do a 2v2 without event weapons." Logan seemed to think about this for a moment. I spun around and got to my feet, taking the opportunity to scan his sister. Though I couldn't tell how, I was fairly sure that Logan was inspecting Bee and I at the same time. Spoiler image. "They are both level 10, I whispered to Bee. Ophelia smiled. "We'll destroy you." Her voice wasn't anything like what I'd guessed, as she had the kind of crackly tone of someone who smoked 8 packets of cigarettes daily. Basically, she sounded like she was 62 years old. Meanwhile, her brother had the voice of a poser, with all its faux deep tones and odd inflections. I looked them both up and down. Aside from the gaudy Roman armor, their physiques were sculpted like statues of warriors, with Ophelia's arms and legs lined with lean muscle, while her brother had wide shoulders and thick arms and thighs. Both of them were at least 6 feet tall, with Ophelia being the tallest of the two. "You get to decide, Gambit," Logan told me. Rolling my neck and producing a series of satisfying pops, I said, "Fuck it, why not? Are we fighting to the death?" Ophelia's smile widened into a sadistic grin. "I'll take that as a yes. Let's fake 'em up," Brock yelled excitedly. Panda crawled down from atop B's head to sit on her shoulder. "You guys are morons." On the count of 3, Logan started. I squeezed the grip on Brock. It seemed that neither of the twins were going to use their guns, which meant they probably had a pretty formidable arsenal of skills. "Isn't it cheating if you use your hammer, when they are not using their weapons?" B whispered. "Fuck 'em," I replied. 3. Logan then yelled and his sister launched forward, conjuring spears in the air. "Ha! I knew they were faking it," Panda yelled, as B activated her beetle brawn, before sending forward a bolt aimed at Logan's throat. "Sacred barrier!" the heroic savior yelled, forming the same holy bubble I'd seen on the cameras. B's attack was immediately repelled. "Interrupt!" I shout, aiming my hand at him, while charging forward with Brock held at the ready. Suddenly a spear from the right slapped against the side of my head harmlessly, before it was reflected back at Ophelia, who was in the middle of stabbing another golden spear into B's curled-up backplates, only for it to be rebounded by her thick carapace. "Watch out!" Logan yelled to his sister, but the spear went straight through her neck and impaled her against the wall, where it held her aloft by its buried tip. B didn't waste a second and went on the offensive, Beetle Blast. The thin needle dug into Ophelia's forehead. A second later her head blew up. Logan let out a scream of despair, just in time for me to land a hit with Brock. Bonk. His body was sent straight through the stone floor, his screaming voice immediately extinguished. Blue particles from Ophelia's weapon began flowing into Brock, perhaps because B didn't have a weapon of her own. "Eh? That was kind of easy, wasn't it?" I said. "You just got lucky." Panda scolded me. "You'd be dead right now if your random reflect hadn't triggered. Pay more attention, you absolute shitfabrains." "Pandemonium," B said loudly, making the panda on her shoulder freeze up. "Do not speak to Gambit like that." "Fine. But you guys got lucky. That's all." "Brock thinks Pretty Boy didn't die," my hammer said. Given that no blue particles were flowing my way through the floor, I was inclined to agree with him. "I wonder where he went?" B said. Spoiler image. Purple Plus is back. I groaned. "They really want you to pick it," Panda remarked. I selected instant delivery instead, as it was clearly the superior choice. Nothing visually happened to Brock, although he did make a weird sound. Spoiler image. "I got an achievement," I told B, then said, "I wished you could have a look." "I wanna be a villain as well," she said. "It sounds fun." "Right now you're just the henchman," Panda remarked dryly. "Doesn't that mean I get killed off immediately?" "I'm promoting you to co-villain," I joked. "I don't think that'll increase the survival rate," she replied. I also got an achievement, by the way. It's kind of mean. Look. Spoiler image. As we both clicked away our pop-ups, their rewards manifested in the air. Big chunky glasses with circular frames fell into B's hands, while a hefty battery-like plug-in fell into mine. Before I could inspect mine, B showed me her new glasses. They are actually really good. Spoiler image. What the hell, that's actually really good. I take offense to being called a nerd though. B exclaimed, pointing a finger at the ceiling. I was clearly an emo before I became a Beatle. Does it matter what people call you? I asked. B gave me a very serious look. Of course it does. Why else would I dye my hair and wear black clothes? A sound of tearing fabric came from nearby, as a hole in the fabric of reality was torn open. Ah, shit, the glitch hunter is still after us, I groaned. Let's get out of here, Panda urged. Though I wasn't one to run away from a fight, I was reminded of how he had survived being torn in half and how he had almost killed B with some sort of projectile reflection like mine. It was possible that my new plugin held an ability to deal with him inside it, but there was no time to check. I took B by the hand. Let's go. Chapter 43. The hallway that the red door dropped us into, where the Maximilian twins had been, led to a large rectangular room that almost looked like an indoor skate park, thanks to ramps and bowls dug into the stone floor. There were dead bodies scattered around, and it was clear that the twins had killed them before running into us. As we moved through the room, the tremor of the pursuing glitch hunter was constantly felt through the floor, which was quite ominous and made it impossible for me to feel like I could take a break. I wondered absent-mindedly if it was some kind of intimidation or a he possessed. It was certainly a long time since I'd felt this kind of sensation. From the skate park-esque room sprouted 3 different hallways, and we picked the leftmost one at the behest of Panda. This one led down a snaking tunnel only 5 feet wide. B was sticking to me as I ran in front of her. Little by little the tremors in the floor abated, as we put more distance between us and the hunter, but they didn't disappear entirely. He must have something similar to your dungeon break ability, Panda commented. Smack him with me. Brock squealed eagerly. I lifted up the hammer as we continued down the ponderous tunnel. I already tried it and it didn't work. Just smack him harder. You didn't use your punch harder on him, Panda remarked, actually paying attention to what Brock was saying. My plugin prevents it, and he might have the interrupt ability as well, so I thought it was too much of a risk. Wait, you were actually being cautious? The way he said it made it seem like he didn't believe I had the capacity for such a thing. Panda, Gambit isn't a moron like you think, B defended me. Thanks, I said. I don't know, the evidence would disagree with you on that. Suddenly the tunnel ended in a wall with a single hole in it. It looked like a slide similar to the kind found in indoor pools. Except, of course, it was made of the strangely smooth organic-looking stone and there was no light within, so it was a sinister darkness that awaited within. Ah, crap. Panda commented. Should we enter it? B asked hesitantly. We don't know where it goes, the plushie replied wisely. I started lifting my legs up into it, before sitting down on the edge and steadying myself against the wall. We don't have a choice, I told them. We know that there's a scary motherfucker back the way we came, and I get the feeling that nothing else in here even compares to how dangerous he is. That's a good point, actually, Panda said, once again surprised. Wait. Did evolving your class increase your intelligence? He asked. It turned it from TBD and into a frowning smiley, so not sure. B put a carapace-covered green finger against the side of the nerdy spectacles she'd unlocked from killing Ophelia, then said, appraise. As she, I guessed, looked at my nonsensical status, she nodded thoughtfully to herself. I think a frowning smiley is mildly better than to be determined. Whatever, I groaned. Let's just get going. The tremors were picking back up again, so it was clear that the glitch hunter was coming closer. I'll be right behind you, B promised, and I pushed myself down the dark stone tube. "Wee!" screamed Brock excitedly. I'd only been sliding down for a few seconds, when an achievement appeared. Spoiler image. Only a few moments passed and the darkness I was sliding down through became a kind of light gray that made it possible to see the details of the tube ceiling above me. An actually useful reward for once, I muttered appreciatively. It was a proper passive too, like the kind you'd find in a fantasy game. While I was sliding down on my back, the smooth stone apparently completely frictionless, I pulled out the heavy battery-like plug-in I'd gotten earlier and inspected it. Spoiler image. With a sigh, I stowed it back into my inventory. I guess it'd be good for this event, I considered, but having a high knockback and the ability to teleport is way more useful, although I do like being able to steal someone's ability. Brock stopped squealing in glee and asked, "You talking to me?" "Just thinking out loud," I replied. "You're not quite right in the head, mate. And you're a talking hammer. Touché. Got me there, didn't you?" Suddenly I felt the ground curve up and my stomach drop, as the tube did a goddamn loop-de-loop. Brock made an excited noise, while I clenched my teeth. I'd honestly never been a big fan of roller coasters, but the speed and G-forces of this stone tube slide was easily rivaling the ones I'd tried. As we came out the 360-degree vertical turn, I'd picked up even more speed and zoomed down on my back fast enough that I was beginning to worry about the landing, wherever it might be. "Let's go again!" Brock yelled excitedly. I pulled out the pocket watch and flipped open the lid. Time remaining, 4.20468671E-6 Millennium kills remaining, 10. No sooner had the information appeared than the tunnel began to brighten as I was reaching some kind of aperture at the bottom. My eyes slowly began to adjust to the light coming closer, while I put away the pocket watch. Then I began preparing for impact with whatever lay at the end. "Hope there's a ramp," Brock said, and, as though the bastard had manifested it with his wishful thinking, I saw that there was indeed a small ramp at the end. "You've got to be foo." I hit the ramp and was sent flying into the air, spinning around slowly and seeing the features of the room. There was a bright green carpet of moss stretched from wall to wall of the large rectangular room, and many players were lounging around complacently. As I finished my rotation through the air, I spotted a familiar person, who, as fate would have it, I was on a direct collision course with. He had his back turned to me, and by the time anyone noticed my trajectory, it was too late to warn him. In a tangle of limbs and a loud groan of surprise and forcefully exhaled air, I collided with the man and tumbled to the moss-covered floor, which was so soft and squishy that it totally cancelled out my impact. Neither of us took any real damage from the crash, but, from looking at the guy's beet-red face, it was impossible to tell. "What's your fudging problem, guy?" I got to my feet and scanned him with my looking glass. I'd gotten good enough at using my inventory mentally that I could seemingly manifest anything within to my hand with a single thought. Spoiler image. "Happy birthday," I told him. I wish people would stop saying that. This system is a capital C for crap. I swear. Wee. I heard someone yell as they sailed through the air. I looked up and saw Bee with Panda on her shoulder come flying to the exact same spot I was standing in. With a large step to the side, I avoided colliding with her, though a Hawaiian shirt guy was not as lucky. After repeating the exact same thing as me just a second prior, Bee got to her feet, then said, "Happy birthday." "F you too," he said angrily and stormed off. Why did I just say that? Bee wondered, as we watched him leave to join some other players lying on their back in the soft moss carpet further away. "'Cause he is the birthday boy," I replied. "Ah, that makes sense. Look at all these weaklings. Let's get to smacking. I scanned the room, then froze up when I saw someone I'd hoped not to run into again. She spotted me as well, with Steve quickly joining her, before they started gathering up a bunch of players around them, forming a mob. "Is that Annabella Exposition?" Panda asked. "We should get out of here," I said, taking B by the arm. Before we even got a few feet towards the exit of the large room, people were yelling my name, and not in the "we love you" way. "Is that a pitchfork?" B asked. A moment later, said pitchfork was hurled through the air at us. Chapter 44B, and I ran out of the room with the strange moss floor. The screaming and frenzied mob quickly followed behind us, stirred on by Steve the birthday boy and Annabella Exposition, who seemed to still hold a grudge from me killing her friend that had turned into a skin stealer. They numbered at least 20, but possibly even as many as 30. I was surprised that so many people had been able to stay in the same area without trouble, but it seemed it was thanks to Steve's strange class. Spoiler image. I just got a passive called Outcast, B said in between breaths, as we sprinted down a wide hallway with doorways lining either side of the room, though we were heading for the one down at the far end. "I got it too," I said, swiping away the pop-ups. "The system is really trying to make you two into the bad guys," Panda said. "You should see what my Unhero plugin does," I told him. "I think I can guess," he replied knowingly. "Wait, why are we running from them, actually?" B asked, coming to a halt. "They have guns? And pitchforks, apparently. So what? Let's just kill them." I came to a halt as well. Actually. Yeah. "Guys, please, don't do this," Panda said. "I'm tired of running away," I told him. "I don't want to be labeled an outcast," B added. We turned around to face the incoming mob, which had already lost some steam, since it seemed their athleticism ratings were quite a lot lower than mine. Granted, B was also pretty out of breath. I pointed my palm at the front of their ranks, where Steve and Annabella were. The latter of the two had a crossbow in her hand, and as she saw us turning to face them in the wide hallway, she leveled it towards me. B copied my gesture. "Giant Slayer Lance!" I yelled, and a large slowly spinning bolt the girth of my thigh manifested in the air in front of me. It began spinning faster and faster, while growing from 1 foot in length to a total of 8, before launching straight at the mob. "Beetle Bolt!" B exclaimed, aiming at Annabella. Her projectile hit just as the woman fired her crossbow at me, and the beetle bolt tore through her upper torso in a spray of blood and viscera. Then my lance hit the center mass of the mob and produced an effect like a bowling ball hitting a pack of closely stacked pins. Players were flung in all directions, some going straight through the floor, others flying through the ceiling or getting stuck halfway buried, with the rest flying against the walls, Steve included. This was the true power of my Uncollide plugin and its glitch collision. "Holy fuck, Gambit!" Panda yelled in outrage. "Fake yay, Broove. Strike." B's hit on Annabella had unintentionally saved her from a head-on collision with my lance, though a lot of the other people with them hadn't been as fortunate. "You've got an arrow in your forearm, Gambit," Panda said. I looked down and saw that he was right. With a simple tug, I tore it out of my body. "Don't worry, I'll get her this time," the beetle girl promised. As she took aim and prepared to launch another bolt, several of the survivors were putting up defenses, either as literal shields or magical ones. There were even 2 healer-type people amongst them, who were tending to those that had survived. But I'd still killed 5 outright, with 2 stuck in the world geometry and slowly choking to death, judging by how their legs were wriggling desperately. Event warning. You have retaken 3rd place. Kills remaining, 5. I was actually starting to feel a bit bad about it all, as I'd proven them all right in their suspicions of me, but then several of the players began charging for us and my feelings changed. Some were shooting off their unevolved guns, while others were lifting bats, swords, bows, crossbows, wands, and any other type of weird weapon they had thanks to their class or dungeon rewards. Beetlebraun! B exclaimed, just in time for several bullets to pulling off her carapace. 3 of the flintlock shots grazed me, while a 4th rebounded back towards the man who'd fired it, destroying his hand. In the end, despite it all, I did exactly what I knew the great game and its insidious creators and showrunners wanted. I went on a massacre. Because of my attributes, I was so much stronger than everyone else, so it was like I was going seal clubbing. Every swing of my hammer was so devastating that when it hit it broke their bodies and tossed them against the walls or ceiling, where many of them flew through thanks to glitch collision. Event warning. You have retaken 2nd place. Kills remaining, 1. As my hammer descended on the 5th person, I was suddenly yanked out of the hallway and the sensation of falling through a black void filled me. Then 2 achievements appeared in front of my eyes in quick succession. Spoiler image. I was tossed down onto a soft black leather couch. A moment later B landed in my lap, along with Panda who'd been riding on her shoulder. What the hell just happened? I wondered, looking around the room we'd landed in. Brock, who had been in my hand just a second ago, was gone. Congratulations! You have completed the Weapon event. You finished with a placement of number 2 out of 1000. Sit back and relax as the event runs its course. Enjoy the refreshments brought by our staff, and talk with your fellow victors, while you watch the other players on the screens. Event time remaining, 36 hours 38 minutes 41 seconds. There were several large black leather couches scattered around the room, as well as a myriad of screens to watch other players, although this time the screens showed a lot more information, such as kills remaining, class, and so forth. Besides the couches and screens, the large room was built like a hotel lobby, though there were no windows, but plenty of gaudy embellishments, like marble pillars, crystal chandeliers, and polished wooden flooring. There were also cockroach humanoids in fancy concierge and bellhop outfits, as well as some dressed like servers. One such cockroach server came over with a tray of glasses full of sparkling champagne. In the distance I saw a person I recognized. It was the woman called Samantha. Apparently she had finished as number 1 of the event, and that was without using glitches like me, which was both impressive and terrifying in equal measure. "Care for a refreshment?" asked the cockroach. His mandibles clicked as he spoke and the polished red-brown carapace of his head reflected a chandelier above us. I almost instinctively declined, but then took one of the fancy glasses and said, "Inspect." Spoiler image. "We're going backing," I told Panda and B, then grabbed the entire tray of drinks and put it in my inventory. The server didn't seem bothered by this and instead just walked away to fetch more. Panda stood up and gave me a judging glare. "Why? You beat the event, you can take a break now." "Fuck that," I said. "Even though we destroyed the broadcast production control, they are still able to broadcast this whole thing." "Huh? You're right." B pointed to a screen, which, although it had no sound, had subtitles showing what the announcer was saying. "Look, they even replaced Ree." It was another wasp in the bottom right of the screen, though this one was colored like an emerald. She was laughing hysterically at the footage of a guy, who was desperately crawling away from someone with a sawn-off shotgun, while trailing blood on the ground. "All we did was pointless," I told Panda. "But there's something else I can do that will really piss them off." I downed the glass of champagne, which tasted of bubbly grape soda. Then I grabbed B by the wrist and said, back_door.bat. The comfortable couch was replaced by bright green soft moss in an instant. Nearby a player shouted in alarm at our sudden appearance. We were back inside the event again. With a pop, Brock appeared in my lap and immediately began crying. Oh God! I saw what non-existence is like. Don't send me back there again, Mr. Gambit. I'll be good. I promise. Welcome back, Brock, I said. Ready to smack an adjudicator? There was a pause, as he collected himself. Fake yes cunt. Chapter 45. Annabella and the birthday boys mob hadn't returned to the comfortable moss room yet, so I took the time to pull out my rewards from my inventory, while handing B one of the victory champagnes. However, as soon as the champagne manifested in my hand, it disappeared in a poof of smoke. I still had the tray and 7 more glasses in my inventory, but it was clear I couldn't pull them out here, as they seemingly had an area restriction tied to them, such as being in the victory lobby. When both of the new trophies were in my lap, a pop-up appeared before I could inspect either of them. Spoiler image. Huh? You need to clear dungeons now to level up, Panda said. That'll slow things down a bit, I replied. Still, level 13 already is huge. B frowned. I didn't get any new levels. How far are you from your next level? I asked. Level progress, she said, then showed me her screen. Spoiler image. That's not that far though, I told her. I want to evolve my class too. She complained impatiently. Panda patted her on the hand and said, Patience, young Padawan. Pretty sure we're firmly on the dark side now, I replied. Don't ruin this for me, Gambit. I ignored him and brought up my status, before trying to invest one of my 3 available points into intelligence. Error. Unable to invest point in chosen attribute. Please pick another. When that didn't work, I invested them in the following manner: vitality, athleticism, and defense. Spoiler image. Still confusing as hell, Panda remarked, looking over my shoulder. It's shaping up though. Sure, if you say so. I ignored his pessimism and finally inspected my 2 event rewards. As I pulled up the first, I saw that players were slowly coming into the room from the far end, meaning I didn't have much time before they spotted us. Fortunately, surprise was on our side still. Spoiler image. I threw the participation trophy away, but it just disappeared and returned to my inventory. Then I looked at the other one, but my hopes were already crushed by the tooltip of the first. That being said, this second one was fancier and was sculpted to look like me, birthday suit and all. Spoiler image. I lifted the top 10 trophy to my lips and gave it a kiss. Next to me, Panda and B both made sounds, like yuck. And why is that a trophy of you and why are you kissing it? Spoiler image. 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 Although the thought of throwing glitter at people was kind of amusing and might even have some decent uses, I picked the plugin slot purely because of the versatility offered by the plugins I was steadily gathering. With a puff of steam and a strange feeling traveling through my body, a new plugin slot opened somewhere. Does either of you see the new slot that just appeared? I asked my friends. It's on your back, on top of your right shoulder plate, B said. Strange, I can't even feel it. I guess it doesn't interfere with your body at all. That's kind of strange. Far from the strangest thing, Panda commented dryly. I brought out the Unhero plugin and shoved it into my shoulder plate hole. Once again, it had a perfectly tight fit, as the cylinder slowly slid down into my body, before releasing a puff of steam and popping out a small lever. As with the first one, I spun it clockwise with my right hand, though the motion was quite awkward due to how it was positioned on my back. A surge of electricity shot through my body, before a familiar message appeared. Plugin inserted. Booting up in Hero Protocol. Installing. The sound of a cassette tape being rewound emitted from the plugin, before a loud click announced its completion. Plugin installed. On Hero Protocol now in effect. Now, let me tell you my plan, I said mischievously, while unable to stop myself from chuckling. Chapter 46. That's your plan? Panda asked. I thought it'd be more clever. Don't be mean, Panda. It's a good plan. I love it. Brock said enthusiastically. Why didn't you get more of those evolution options for Brock? Panda suddenly wondered. I shrugged. Maybe they stopped sending them after I finished the event? If that's the case, then why is he still here? Oi, I don't like your tone, Jiminy. You tryna get rid of me? Inspect, I said, looking at the bonk hammer. Spoiler image. Huh? Yeah, he's definitely maxed out in levels, I said, then showed it to B. Why does it say evolve? Below the levels? She asked. I squinted. I don't know. Evolve me, Daddy. Please don't call me that ever again, I told him, then I clicked the text. The purple balloon hammer suddenly began to squeak and squelch, while Brock made sounds that were too obscene to describe. The handle collapsed into the three-headed hammer portion, before the whole mess started to glow brightly and conform to some new shape. It was hard to see from the intense light it was giving off, but I had a vague idea what it might be, as I saw how the outline of Brock morphed. Suddenly the light died away, and by now I had attracted a lot of attention from the players returning to the Moss room, as well as from the ones already in here. Some seemed to realize I was the exact same person they had just driven out of here no more than 10 minutes ago. Gambit, I don't want to interrupt your fun, but Annabella and Birthday Boy just came back into the room. It doesn't matter, I told him. I'd gotten the kills I needed, and though I thought they were both colossal assholes, I no longer needed to kill them to get what I wanted. B had gotten to her feet though and was preparing to fight if it came down to it. I looked down at Brock's new shape. I feel weird, but in a good way. If it's not too much to ask, I'd like to punch stuff. Inspect, I said again, looking at his new shape. Spoiler image. Image. A packet of gum landed in my right hand and I put it away in my inventory. Considering how powerful the last fusion ability had ended up, I wanted to save the next one for something special. Or maybe I'd use it to combine birthday_suit and reflective shell. I know what you're thinking, Panda said, looking at me with a judgmental gaze. And absolutely not. Don't you dare fuse birthday_suit with other abilities. Am I really that transparent? Yes. I sighed, then picked Brock up and slipped him onto my right hand. It was a bit unnerving how much it felt like I had just shoved my hand into a balloon animal, especially considering it was supposed to be a weapon. The fear of it popping the first time I tried to punch something was hard to shake. Brock made a noise. Stop that, I told him. You're making it really awkward. Next time, warn me first. Oh. Sorry. I guess I did just shove my hand in without asking for consent. I forgive you. If you two are done, we've got Witch Hunt 2, the witch hunting coming our way, Panda warned. I stood up and I rolled my shoulders. Immediately, Annabella and Steve, who'd been leading the group of shell-shocked players, froze in place. I didn't blame them. B and I had basically wiped the floor with them last time. We come in peace. I yelled in their direction. Fuck you, Gambit. Annabella yelled back. She had a nasty stitch pattern around where B's bolt had hit her, but seemed mostly recovered already. Hey, You attacked us first. B yelled back. We hadn't even done anything to you. Eh? Panda started. Yeah, that's probably not true, I said. I mean, I beat up Hawaiian shirt guy a bit and I killed Annabella's friend, although he was a skin stealer, so I had no choice. B scoffed. Whatever, that's no reason to try and hurt me as well. I thought about it. No, you're right. Fuck you, Steve. I yelled back. Your shirt sucks. What the flip did I do? No one likes your shirt, birthday boy. B joined in. Panda tapped me in the side of the head. I hadn't noticed him hopping onto my shoulder. Can you two morons knock it off? Do the thing you were planning to do, Gambit, so we can go out in a blaze of glory as the adjudicator liquefies us or whatever. Fine, I said, then grinned. It's time for a mass eviction. Bad catchphrase. You have taken 1 point of damage. The 1 point damage manifested itself as the feeling of being pinched on my thigh. Ow. Panda sighed, shaking his soft head. Dungeon break. I then yelled, grabbing a hold of B's right wrist, worried we might be separated again. Activating dungeon map. Total player number, 13,660. Nearest player, 1 yard. Total enemy number, 399. Nearest enemy, 780 yards. Nearest boss, 418 yards. Nearest exit, not applicable. The map that popped up showed the room we were in as filled with golden dots, and only a few rooms away was a large red dot. It was fairly easy to guess that this was the new boss added to the event, and I was sure it was the Glitch Hunter. When I clicked on it for confirmation, the name did not appear, and a second later the dot completely vanished. I looked around, dreading the sound of the tearing rift in reality announcing his arrival, but it never came. Meanwhile, Annabella's mob was slowly gathering their courage to go after us again. B's dot looked like a player's, unlike when I'd seen it earlier, so I guessed that invulnerable targets like what she'd been under Ree's protection, showed up as gray dots, while those who worked for the agencies didn't show up at all. What are you waiting for? Panda said. I gritted my teeth, expecting the system message, as I clicked the Eject All Players and Enemies button in the bottom of the map screen. Spoiler image. I clicked yes. No announcement of an adjudicator's imminent arrival came. Then I fell through the floor. With a gasp, I appeared on the side of a street with B right next to me. Nearby were 4 beetle agents knelt in deep prayer, though there were no signs of the minor collectors. It seemed absurd that these guys had been waiting for us this whole time, but when I thought about it, maybe it wasn't actually so far-fetched, since they seemed to know we'd be returning to this spot. Before either of us could figure out a plan, a new announcer voice filled the air, while everything froze in place. It was a female voice like the first, which I belatedly realized had belonged to Ree, but this one sounded kind of bored and annoyed. Then again, she'd probably gone directly from making fun of people dying to having to make this service announcement. Players of Castleberg and Madaville, as well as the environs that I won't waste the time naming. Due to unforeseen technical difficulties, you have all been ejected from the Weapon event 36 hours ahead of schedule. This means that only 4 of you managed to actually complete the game event and unlock the powerful rewards it gave. The result is that not only are there now many more of you than expected, but the average player level is also far below what was forecasted. This means that many of you will die from simply being too weak. Enjoy your borrowed time. Also, stay tuned for an update about the new changes that have taken place in your region. These changes include safe zones, the merchant and coin system, the benefactor and quest system, as well as the newly created dungeons and roaming enemies and bosses. Oh, and I guess I might as well tell you the winners of the Weapon event. Number 1, Samantha. Number 2, Gambit number 3, Logan Maximilian number 4, Tina and Nina I forgot to mention. From now on and until your world is nothing but a desolate wasteland full of monsters, every player will have their own personal I Spy drone documenting their struggles. The most entertaining deaths will go on our highlight reel, and if you end up on this, we may briefly resurrect you for a mandatory interview. That's all for now. Chapter 47. Although the recursive element of the punch harder ability didn't work with my OnCollide plugin enabled, it wasn't necessary in this case. My punch connected with the forehead of the beetle agent with such strength that his whole back arched and his spine, or whatever analogous thing a creature like him possessed, snapped. The double impacts of Brock's new form, plus the ability, created so potent an impact that the man died instantaneously, his limp body tumbling across the ground violently, before half of his torso became submerged and stuck in the sidewalk pavement 20 yards away. "Fake yes," yelled Brock. The other three had barely managed to stand up, before I drove my fist into the abdomen of the next one in line, once again uttering punch harder. "Fake you." His whole body did a 360-degree spin while flying into the agent right behind him, sending them tumbling to the asphalt of the road, with the first getting his limbs stuck in the ground and trapping the other agent he'd collided with. The last one standing raised his palm at me. "Interrupt!" I exclaimed, and his beetle bolt weapon failed to fire. "Beetle blast!" B yelled and launched her own attack at the man, though the projectile bounced off his carapace, failing to trigger. She fired off another, but it had the same lack of effect. By then I'd cleared the distance between us with 3 great strides and sent a right hook into the side of his helmet, punching his head clean off and spraying a fountain of white blood into the air. That was sick as Brock squealed in delight, as a misty rain of beetle blood fell down around us. "One guy is still breathing," Panda observed coldly. I stalked over to the one trapped in the ground by the corpse of his comrade, but he had managed to trigger some kind of ability, as a whirring and loud buzzing was coming from inside his body. "I think he's going to blow up," B yelled, and I quickly spun on my heel and ran back towards her, leaping at the last second and bringing her down to the ground with me. Nothing happened. Then the buzzing died down. "Huh. I guess I was WR," was all she managed to utter before the agent's body exploded with 1,000 tiny flaquettes shooting in every direction. A few of them buried themselves in my back and thighs, but B, who was covered by my body, was unscathed. "Oh. Are you okay?" she asked. "Fake A. Let's do that again," Brock said excitedly. It was strangely comforting that he was no less talkative, despite having become a balloon gauntlet. Panda sighed. Of course they gave their agents goddamn unalive buttons. "I shouldn't really be surprised," I remarked as I got to my feet. B winced when she saw the projectiles piercing my body. While she began plucking them out, I looked at the crater left behind where the agent had self-destructed. "I leveled up to 7, she then said. "Just 3 more then," I replied. "I wonder what kind of evolution you'll get." "Maybe they'll turn you into a different insect," Panda joked. "I wanna be a moth," she said. "If I understand these agencies correctly, the moths are basically their coders, so if that's an option, it might be powerful." "Look," Panda said, pointing his chubby fingerless arm at one of the corpses. "They all have leftovers." "Leftovers?" B wondered. "That's what they call loot," I told her. "You didn't see it when we killed the psychic snail, right? Do you mind if I check them?" she asked. She'd already pulled all of the flaquettes out of my back and legs. I indicated the scene of carnage with my balloon-covered hand. "Be my guest." With a lot of enthusiasm, she skipped over to the nearest corpse, of which only a half-submerged leg and helmet remained following the explosion. "This one has 10 of something called game coins," as well as Agent's torso carapace. She moved on to the next, after taking the loot. This one has another 10 coins, an Agent's leg carapace. She searched the last 2 that had landed on top of each other. 20 more coins, Agent's head carapace, and the Agent's litany of system prayers. Can you use any of the armor? I asked her. It doesn't seem like it. I tried to put the torso armor on and it gave me an error that it was incompatible, maybe because I'm already covered in carapace. What about the litany? B pulled it out of her inventory, though to me it just appeared out of thin air. I took a hold of the small prayer book and inspected it. Spoiler image. That seems useful for you, I told her. She nodded. I won't have to be so conservative with my spells. You were being conservative? Panda asked in horror. We both ignored him. Can't I have the carapace pieces? I asked her. It actually combined into an Agent's carapace suit when all 3 pieces entered my inventory, she remarked, surprised, before pulling it out and immediately dropping it on the asphalt road due to its weight. You should also take the game coins, she said. Keep half. Are you sure? Of course. She nodded, then handed me a single large coin that apparently represented 20 coins. It was the size of a frisbee, as thick as my clenched fist, and made from some golden metal that weighed nothing, making it feel like a styrofoam prop from a movie. Inspect. Spoiler image. I stooped to pick up the carapace suit and inspected it as well. Spoiler image. Without wasting any time, I put it into my inventory, turned away from B and unequipped my tattered suit, then equipped the carapace armor. Immediately, it felt like I was being squeezed all over by chunky and slimy latex, and a shiver ran down my back. It was suffocating with the helmet on, as it pressed against my nose and mouth, while the eye slots were positioned in such a way that my human eyes could not see out of them. As soon as I thought that I wanted to take it off, the helmet opened up and retracted down into the neck plates, allowing me to breathe and see normally. After swallowing a lungful of air gratefully, I began moving my arms and legs around, trying to get a feel for the mobility. To my surprise, it was hardly noticeable, though I could definitely feel how I'd gotten slower. It seemed that my tattered black suit had barely counted as clothing, thus giving me a big boost from birthday_suit, while the carapace suit seemed to fully negate its effects. Fortunately, swapping between clothes was easy with the inventory system, so I could switch at times when I needed the extra speed and jump height. You look exactly like an agent with the helmet activated, B said. Maybe I can use it to blend in and avoid people like Hawaiian shirt guy and Annabella, I considered. I don't think you'll be blending in with a suit like that, she told me honestly. Also, the namatag still says Gambit the Moron, Panda remarked. I looked down at my chest and saw that the white namatag sticker was still there. God damn it. Tope continued,